Yeah, we're live. I'm late. That's okay. Today was a busy day. Today was all automotive day for me. I had a lot of stuff that I did. I worked on 3 different projects, which is good. It's sunny out. It's nice. It's not terribly hot. It's not terribly cold. It's just like that perfect kind of project weather. So I had my wife's car needed new brake rotors and pads, so I did that. And then I also did on the Sprint Turbo Bonneville race motor, Bonneville race project. I did the fuel tank, which was full of bad fuel and junk and rust and stuff. And so I emptied all of that fuel out into a jug. Turns out it was only about 5 gallons. I thought it was full, and I thought that tank was bigger than that, but it obviously wasn't quite full. Emptied all that out, got it all into one jug, and I was smart. Normally I would not do this, but what I did was before I did this, I went down and bought funnels, various different ones, because they sell a bunch of them at a time. You could buy a bunch of them for $3 or $4. So I did that, and I think I got them at Harbor Freight. I got a couple of fuel jugs. I got 2 5-gallon ones, and they have all kinds of like safety nozzle things on them, but cut most of that stuff off, get it out of the way. They do have filters on them, which I like. That's a good idea to keep all the debris out of them. In this case, one of them is just a storage jug for this used fuel, which I probably would not put in anything else. If I did, and you guys let me know what you think about it, maybe squeeze a gallon at a time on a full tank, pouring it through a coffee filter into my truck, because it's just like a processing plant. And then, for every full tank, I could get 1 gallon of what essentially turpentine or whatever. So I could do that, because I don't know how long that's been sitting. It could be years. It smells really bad, and it's not in good shape. But at any rate, I got all that done. I got the tank out. What I did was then take my pressure washer and spray out everything to try to get all of the rust and debris at least out of this tank has a central sump where the pickup would go into for the pump. And that's good, because then it only has small openings down at the bottom where the fuel would come in. So I think less debris would get in there anyway. And what I'm planning on doing on this thing is running this tank and having that be whatever pump I put in there, just be a lift pump. And then it will go to a sump that will be dedicated with the high pressure, high volume pump, like a 255, because it's way more than I need for a 1-liter Sprint turbo motor. Even if we get up to, let's say, 250 horsepower when we're running this thing turbocharged, a 255 is overkill for that. We could just run a stock truck pump or whatever, and it would be fine. But that's the idea. And so the one in the tank will just be a lift pump, and then there'll be a sock on that pump. There'll be an inline filter between the two, and then there'll also be a sock on the pump that we put in this sump or small fuel cell, let's call it. And so that's my plan for that. But I also got everything back together, because I've taken the motor and trans out of the Sprint. To do that, I disassembled the front suspension. Now I got that stuff all back together, got the struts back together, got the spindle back together, a steering arm, all of that, and got the wheels and tires and stuff back on it. So at least I can set it down and roll it around, because what I want to do is I need to roll it back a little bit. I got very little room in my garage. I have the cherry picker there with the motor and trans out, kind of sitting on the cherry picker. So I need to put the engine and trans on some sort of little rolling furniture dolly or whatever. I have another one on that already. And I need to put that on a rolling cart so I can move it out of the way. And what I want to do is I want to take the head off of that motor and see if this thing has a blown head gasket. It's definitely had 1 cylinder down when I did a cranking compression test. So something's going on. I'd like to take it off and see what it is. I have that motor. I have a spare. I have another stock one that's all together that I know that runs. At least it ran when it came, famous words, it ran when it came out of the car, when it came out, but it's coming out of my car and I know what condition it was in. So it was running very good when we did that. And so I got that. I have that motor. And then I also have another motor that comprised of parts, a block and a crank and 4 draws and 4 pistons and all that I can put together in a ported head and a fancy, super richy intake manifold that's not together yet. So what I want to do is, my goal is take the motor that I know is good, made it to the transmission with a good clutch, put it back in. Ish is going to hook up the Haltech. We'll be able to run that, do testing on it. And by the time we're done with the kind of testing that we want to do for that, the other motor hopefully would be together. Or honestly, maybe with this motor, we might be able to run the number with enough boost and stuff. So we'll see what happens with that. I'd like to put the race motor together and get it ready for Bonneville so that we know that it won't be hurt. For that one, the ideal situation is I would like to do the forged rods, forged pistons. I think we have rings with the pistons. I bought an MLS head gasket. He might be here. Bought an MLS head gasket. I just need to verify that it's going to work with the water passages. And then I'm going to put head studs on it from ARP. Even if we have to re-drill them or whatever we have to do, put head studs on it. I have a cam that's down at Schneider. Those guys are regrinding me a camshaft. We're going to do a fully ported head, maybe bigger valves. I don't know. We'll see. I don't know if that's necessary. The real important thing is for what we're doing is a camshaft's going to help a lot. A ported head obviously will help. The intake manifold being the runner length that I need for the RPM range that we want. We don't need to run this thing any more than 6,500 RPM, which is not going to be a problem at all. The stock motor already runs to 6,000 and makes power up there. 5,800 or something is where it makes peak power now. So we don't need to do big changes to get it to make the power that we need it to make. And so all that would be good. And being able to do that without the vane meter and all that's going to be good. So, and then also, in addition to working on the Sprint and getting all that done, and then doing the pads and rotors on my wife's car, then I turned my attention to my truck and put in the sending unit, a new sending unit for the oil pressure. Because the oil pressure, you guys know, I've been having problems with that, and it's been low, and it's been wavering, it's been weird. And so I'm like, I just went and bought a sending unit. I'm going to put that in. Let's just see what it does. And I went around the corner to a neighbor and asked him to borrow. And you guys will be seeing him because he does refurbishing of the dash clusters. He also is a big LS guy and has lots of cool LSs. He's got an early truck with an LS swap in it. He's got an Escalade. He's got a truck with a turbo deal that's, I don't know, making 12 or 1300 horsepower. So he's got a lot. So I'm probably going to go over and do an interview with him, and that will be cool. But he had the deep socket, the sensor socket that I needed that makes life so much easier. I know whenever we run these things on the engine dyno, we take that sensor out and we usually just throw it away. Sometimes we keep it just as a cap for that hole so nothing gets in there. But we put another fitting on there that has been drilled and tapped for, like a pipe fitting with a AN on it. And then we run a line up to the dyno so that we can monitor oil pressure there in that position. And that works really good. But because this is on my truck, I took the engine cover off, and then I noticed reaching your hand back in there to get it, there's a little mount that comes off of the factory early truck manifold. This designed for a clip, probably a harness thing or something. And so I reached back there and immediately scratched up my arm. I'm like, oh yeah, that has to go. So I took my little Milwaukee cutter and just cut that thing off, and then took a file and filed it all down. So now it's out of the way. So I could go back there and reach and unclip the thing. We put the socket on there, a couple of wobblies and extensions, and got that off, put it back in. And now it is better, because when I went over and borrowed the sensor spark plug or socket from him, he said, you know that this is probably not it. I said, I know it's probably not it. I said, but I bought one and I wanted to try it. I said, it's acting weird. It's acting not like this is RPM related or anything. It's not doing what I would expect it to do if all of this was working right. So I put the sensor in, plugged it in, drove it around. It is better. It's not fixed, but it's better. The reading is higher now, and it seems to be a little more stable, but it's still lower than I want. And it's still lower than it was before. And right now it looks like, according to the dipstick, that it's over full. And so I'm going to put it on level ground and figure out like how many quarts of oil I have in this thing. And then we'll do the dip the nose thing and see if it's a pickup or anything. And I was talking to him about dropping the pan and stuff. And he said, well, one way to do it. And he said, you could do that without dropping the pan. I said, but how do you get I said, there's only one way I know of to get the pickup out with the pickup still bolted in where it bolts in you know, basically above the windage tray. I said, there's only one way to do that. I said, he goes, yeah, you got to pry it down. I said, yeah, I don't really want to do that. You could pry it down or pry it back up. I'm like, yeah, I don't think that that's a good idea. He said, but you know what I've seen people do is take the pump assembly apart. So take the face plate off of the pump, take the gears out, undo the pump, and then you could move the pump up enough to get it past the pickup that goes into the pump. I said, oh, that's a good idea, because I kind of wanted to check the pump anyway. Jimmy and I were talking about, hey, if you have a pump that you think, like on an old motor like this, oh, the pump, maybe I need to put a new pump in it. Well, do you? I mean, do they wear? Because like the gear is, of the two things, of the housing and the gear, the housing is aluminum, the gear is steel. The housing, I mean, the gear is not going to wear on the facing, on the front and back facing. That's not going to happen. And it's probably not going to wear around the circumference of the gear either, because the thing that would wear would be the aluminum, either on either of the facings or on the outer edge. I said, but that's all covered with oil. So when the thing's running, maybe on startup, maybe there's some wear. So I always wanted to take one apart with high mileage like this and see if there's wear. Now, there could be wear on the gear to gear interface, but I have no before number to, take a feeler gauge and check that. I don't know what it is or what it was to begin with. I'm sure that the manual will give us, maybe they would give us specs for that, but I didn't know what it was before. So I don't know if it wore, actually, if that was the thing. I'm thinking that I like the pump that we have in the L33. I think it's got oil pressure, man. It works good. And I honestly think that this will too, with this pump in it. But I thought, well, while I have a pump out, maybe I'll just put a high volume pump in it. So there's all those considerations, which I think will be cool. But tonight, what I want to talk about is ostensibly is pretty far into it. Are the things to think about, and we could go over these quickly. Things to think about when you're doing a cam swap. So before you do, and this is what I was working on the truck, so it got me thinking about this. Well, when you go to do a cam swap, whether it's on an LS or small block Chevy, Ford, Dodge, or whatever you're going to do, before you do that and you start making performance upgrades, it's a good idea to make sure that the thing is working right to begin with. Because it's like going and getting a tune, but you have a broken spring. You can't tune around that. You can't tune around other mechanical problems or even electric problems, bad sensors or whatever. You can't tune around that. You can, and it's the same thing. If you put a cam in on a motor that's down 15 or 20 horsepower because of whatever reason, the camshaft, you're just not going to get what you could get out of the camshaft because the thing's not running right. So there are a lot of things to consider when getting a camshaft, and other things too, like this oil pressure deal. If you have low oil pressure, do you want to put a cam in it where now you're going to be revving it higher? I mean, the oil pressure will be higher at higher RPM, and maybe that's enough for you. But make sure that the motor is right. So on the camshaft, the other things you have to think about, valve springs. Does your cam need valve springs? Is it an MSR cam? Can you use other stock springs like we can with the LS stuff? We can use the 550 lift springs or the inexpensive Richard Holder Performance / BTR $79 springs. Are those things available for the kind of cam that you'd want to put in a small block Chevy or small block Ford, that kind of stuff? Are there kits available where it's a cam and springs? I'd like to see more of that in the Ford and Chevy market. I'd like to see like this cam and spring package. Put this in, this spring works with the retainer and all that. This cam works. That's great. I'd like to see more of that on a 5-liter Ford and more of that on small block Chevys, L31s, LT1s, whatever. 8.1s are another good example. Gen 6, 454s, all those. I'd like to see all of that. So cam and springs, injectors. If you're going to make more power, you got to have bigger injectors. We got the 50 pounders on sale right now. But if you have an 8.1 on your application, look and see what size injector you have, multiply by 16, and then go, okay, do I have enough? My motor's making this much. When I put a cam in, it's going to make this much. Is this much less than the amount that the injectors will support? Then you're good. If not, you're going to need bigger injectors. If you have a carburetor, actually a carburetor is a really good metering device, and you put a camshaft in, the carburetor goes, okay, you got more air? Guess what? Boom, you got more fuel. It might not be exactly in the right ratio. You might have to adjust some things on the carburetor, But that's not the same as changing injectors. And usually adjusting the carburetor doesn't cost you what putting injectors in. Piston to valve clearance, if you're choosing big cams, that's consideration. I want to put the biggest cam you can put in there. Okay, well, the biggest cam you can put in there is the one that's closest to piston to valve clearance, closest to like catastrophic engine failure. Because if the valve hits the piston, if it nicks it just a little bit, you might get away with bending the valve or just having a nick in your piston, all the way to snapping the head off the valve and jamming it into the piston and the cylinder head and then breaking the motor. So all of that stuff can happen. So all of that's a major consideration. So very important. So what I want to know for tonight is who else has been working on their project stuff, and have you guys gotten stuff done? Okay. Should I? Okay. Okay, rather than let's see. Okay, rather than pull and do a razor blade rebuild, on my existing motor, should I swap another motor into this 2002 Silverado? So the other option for me, as I was talking about, to cure this oiling system and the fact that it has 350,000 miles on it, I was thinking about just pulling the motor. And then I have two ways of going about once I do that. I could take this one apart, make sure all the rings are not stuck together. I'm pretty sure that the oil rings are. I could do a quickie ball hone. I could do a Super Richie razor blade rebuild on the deck service. I could hit it with emery cloth or whatever. I could do that. Put a big flat bar and do my own machining. Put when I have it apart, put ring gap in it. Do the razor blade rebuild on the 706 heads. It probably has 706 or 862 heads. I honestly I don't even remember looking at this one. And then also take the valves out and do some polishing compound on those and swap it all back in there. Maybe put a low buck truck camshaft in there or something. That would be good. So should I just do the one that's in there basically, or just build up another one and then just take that one out, put the other one in, and be done with it? There. You got to read carefully though. Let's see how people do it. Lunchbox, Tug, what's going on? Jordan, Marshall, Phil, and Tina, what's going on? Welcome. Neil, what's going on? All the way over are you in the UK? Just took out my blown 6-liter and put in a 5.3 for getting that better fuel mileage. 5.3 came with 28 thousandths ring gap already. Nice. Dragman, what's going on? Greg, are you nomad? Is this where we come to ask all our dumb questions? You can ask whatever kind of question that you want. I will give dumb answers, though. Lunchbox. What are your thoughts on dumb questions? Exactly. Which video shows a stock Explorer 302? I've looked, but there's so many. Do you remember what horsepower a junkyard Explorer motor makes with a 4-barrel? Yes, it's going to be around 250. With a dual plane, a 4-barrel, and headers on it, it makes about 250, if I remember right. It's about what an HO does. Although, now that you mention it, I think we've only run the top end stuff, maybe. I don't remember running an Explorer cam on there. Exactly that. My old LS swap square body to get rid of aged fuel worked well. Did you pour some of it in every once in a while and just use it? I was thinking about just pouring it somewhere and let a little bit at a time and just letting it evaporate. Tried mixing diesel and gas to see if it would improve the efficiency. Spoiler alert, it did not. Meanwhile, I'm just trying to figure out how to get the gas out of my tank so I can convert my 63 Impala to diesel. Punch a hole in it, man. I had to siphon it out, and it was nasty. It was not good. Not good at all. You know where all of the because here's what would happen at West Tech is we would put fuel in and try different things, and some of it's pump gas, some of it's race gas. Every once in a while, some of it's E85. And so the gas, invariably, we'd have jugs there of a little bit of gas that we didn't remember what it was. And so that would always go in the forklift. I had a 2010 Camaro SS. Engine blew up. I'm an LC9 with 706 heads, LS2 intake manifold. And to swap in, what kind of would you guess? What kind of what, Songbird? I don't know what you're asking. It's going to work fine. You want high horsepower. So do you want to do that naturally aspirated, or do you want a turbo? Turbo is the way to get high horsepower. You're not trying very hard. You're doing it right here while we're talking. Way back when I ran my small block Chevy S10 on like 1981 fuel. It was 2005. It smelled like varnish. Yeah, this stuff is bad. I just wanted to get it basically out of the garage, so everything in the garage didn't smell like that. I covered it back up with a like a plastic bag and then put something on top of that so that it didn't outgas too bad. It would still come out the hose from the vent or from the fill, but you know, it's not good. I wasn't going to let 30 gallons of fuel go to waste. That reminds me, I need to go over and siphon all of the fuel out of the Metro, because I put the fuel that was in it was not good. We did all the testing with the AMR blower on there, and I put more 93 in it. I think I filled it up with with 93. So I need to go pirate that fuel out and put it in my truck. 3,200-pound Camaro, 228, 230. So it's a sloppy stage 2 cam, 500 horsepower NA, 331 gear. Does a 2800 stall sounds fine. I don't know that cam is going to get you to 500 horsepower, but will stock internals last a long time with lots of boost like twin turbos, or should I do forged? What is your desired power level? We've run 1500 on the stock bottom end stuff. It's not going to last a long time at that power level, but lots of guys are out there doing lots of passes on like 1,000 horsepower stuff, 700-800 horsepower stuff on stock internals, as long as you have ring gap. Shopping cart bases make wicked engine holders too. Yeah, I'm not going to go pirate some of those. But because these motors are so late, I mean, I just lifted it up out of the thing. In this one, on this one with the engine and trans, I used the cherry picker, but the cherry picker didn't know that there was something on there. But when I grabbed the engine and transmission, they were already separate from the back of the truck, because I got spares with this. I just picked the motor up and set it down onto this cart. It's an aluminum 3-cylinder, so it's not very heavy. You know, it's like 1,000 pounds. So I just grabbed that thing and rustled it out. My 6-liter exploded number 7 piston, which broke number 8 rod in half, which also busted the oil pan. Yeah, when something goes bad, there's like, you find out there's not a lot of room in there for extra stuff. I like to put my race motor together, going on 8 years now. What's up? I got the heads off my 15 Chevy SS, about to pull the cam tonight. I still get confused on the TDC and timing and all that. Is yours an LT motor? There are marks on both sprockets. Learning everything overhead valve V8 as I built Honda Nissans for 10 years. Changing a cam on overhead cam is like changing oil. I'm dreading changing the cam on my LT1 Gen 2 4th Gen Camaro. That will be a lot easier. If you can do twin cam motors, you can do a 1 cam in the block motor. It's a lot easier. Nomad, what's going on? I had an actual question, chat. Whoever Never built an LS, but got a 5.3 with 243 heads. Do I need bigger valves to flow up to 6,500? Or they just need to be ported? You don't need to do anything to those heads. Those heads will rev up to 6,500 without any problem. The 243 heads, if you port them, will flow more by quite a bit. And then max effort 243 heads, which you don't need on a 5.3 because you won't be able to take advantage of what the heads have to offer. But maximum ported heads, stage 2, stage 3, whatever people want to call them, do have bigger valves, at least on the intake, and usually on the exhaust too, but not a lot bigger on the exhaust. But they can get those to flow more than 300 CFM, but you're never going to make a 600 horsepower 5.3. So, and since those heads will already support 500 horsepower, you can make more with ported ones, but you don't need bigger valves is the answer. I had to cut my passenger LT header off. How come? Were the bolts stuck or something? If you could only test one engine ever, what would it be? I wouldn't do that. That's not a choice for me. I like I like all of the motors. In fact, the motor that I'm most excited about is always the next one. Rotaries for me, I would love to run a rotary. I just want a simple 12A or 13B, just a stock one, and then I could put a header on it and carburetors and turbos and stuff. Could you dyno a Cosworth XD for Rob? Rob doesn't have any problem getting stuff dynoed, I don't think. Sludge. I bought a 4.8 Sierra a while back. Similar problem, decided to drop the pan, lower the diff a bit, and yeah, did pump and pickup. Gramp spent a day, 1/16 turning, one. Yeah, that's what I was told, that it's going to be hours to get all that done. What intake will work on a Gen 2 LT1 distributor conversion? Can I drill a hole in the stock intake and fake distributor so I can prime oil? You can prime the oil without that intake manifold on. So then you just put a distributor drive in there, just like you do any other small block Chevy. You don't want to drill a hole. I have done that already. I have an LT1 intake manifold that has a hole drilled in it. But to do it correctly, you would need to mill that back section, mill and weld up that back section to make it flat, to go for the distributor to go in and not be like cocked and side loading, because we just hole solid a hole, put it in there, and I just tighten it down so it doesn't spin a lot. And it works okay, but it's never something I would recommend. Happy holidays. Yes. Well, we can, tomorrow's Easter. We can say what day it is. That's all fine. If somebody saying what day it is upsets somebody, then that's silly. It's not saying something bad about another holiday when we recognize one holiday. Recognize all of them, man. It's all good. That bolt once out had a factory hole opposite it and is not used, and makes the job that much easier when that bolt you put back in an unused hole, but the sludge in the pan took up the entire sump. I want to make my 350 small block stock 95. Oh, you want to cam your 350 small block. Lots of camshafts for a small block. The pickup tube literally had a small depression to pick from. I've never seen anything like it. For the modular 544 valve, I like the Crow GTHO cams, 230 cams with 550 lift. Okay. There's lots of good cams for modular Fords. Add a comment link to your 4L60 video last night. Oh, you added one. Okay. Did you stick with a 4L60 in your truck? Yes. The 4L60 that we just bought another transmission. We bought it turned out that it was a rebuilt one from Summit with a Corvette servo. I don't know if they did. I need to look it up on Summit. Maybe it will tell us that they did more than that. I'm hoping that they did some kind of clutch and band upgrade on it. But all we know is that it was a rebuilt one from Summit and it had that servo in it. You could tell by the way it shifts, but it's just a 4L60. But we didn't upgrade it in any way. We bought a stock converter from the local auto parts store. Now we're talking, yeah, we can talk about 8.1s. What did you have? If you have a question, this is the right place to ask. The problem I have is a quick check tends to tend into a full build. Yeah, that's true. Always go bigger, more power, 360-degree duration, at least, if not 720. Which LS is the best bang for the buck for forced induction? I want to start building a junkyard LS for when my nitrous LT1 eventually dies. Well, all you need to do is go to the wrecking yard and grab an LS. And then whatever LS that is, it will make a bajillion horsepower. So you just need a cam and springs and boost, and then you're good. I've gotten heads apart, but I'm not sure what to upgrade on this car. I've got everything and got turbo 400 trans for the LC9, but not sure where to go with the build. You just got to decide, figure out first thing, what's my desired power output? And then all the other things fall into place. I got all 4 crush tubes welded. My K-frame upgrade. I'm at the point of adding some more weld and making it look nice. There you go. Then I'll get the engine running. Can you run 660 springs with a low buck truck camshaft? Yes. Yes, you can. You don't need those. And it's better to run the springs closer to coil bind than that, but they'll work. Wrapping up 2 engines, 292 small block that mimics a 302 and a 311 small block for my front engine dragster. Oh, that's cool stuff. So what is the 292 just an overbore 283? Or is it a 4-inch bore and then a really short stroke? Just did away bar and end links and adjustable panhard rod and centered the rear end on the 2-wheel drive Tahoe 5.3 liter. What I'm wondering now in looking at the suspension on this Sprint is I would like to replace a lot of these bushings. And I don't know if I can still buy, I'll have to do some searches. I don't know if I can still buy a lot of these bushings. I don't even know if they're available. So I'm wondering if I'm going to have to finagle, do some measuring and finagle and put something else on there. I have a 5. Have you done it? Let's see. I'm there. I love siphoning gas. Not this kind of gas. This is really bad. I should put up a shoe wearing crumb cake. That's right. Let's scroll. Okay, here we go. My 08 53 had low oil pressure. Overfill oil to see if the pickup tube was a problem, and no. So I put motor flush in the oil and it fixed the issue. Okay. Mine from the dipstick is reading that it's overfilled already. And I was wondering if that was a problem, if we're getting windage or something, but I don't think that that's it. But I like the idea of the flush. I might try that just to see. Like with my neighbor, we're just laughing like, look, you're trying the easy stuff because it's the easy stuff. L33 swap with a low buck truck camshaft. Yeah, that would be good. My 5.3 that had 300,000 miles on it. I just took completely apart. Rings are fine. Bearings look brand new and still has all the machining marks in it. That's perfect, man. Save the block on heads for another build. Do that Big Bang LY6 6-liter that didn't blow up. The problem with that Big Bang motor, and I don't know if this is the trick flow heads that are on it or what the problem is it keeps getting water in it. It keeps getting water in coming up through the head studs. And I don't know, I haven't looked close enough to see if I tried pressurizing. I filled the thing up with water and pressurized the bolt holes to see if air would come out into the water, into the block. And it didn't do that. So I thought first that those got like hydraulic and broke through down there, because that's happened sometimes when guys screw in bolts and there's water in there, it just breaks the block. But that wasn't the case. So now what I'm thinking is maybe we have crushed the heads and in the seating surface for the head bolts and the washers or studs, that maybe the heads are leaking. But I had the heads pressure tested. Can swap motors in an afternoon. I have a 318 that made 200 horsepower, but then I put the Quadrajet and gold Moroso valve covers. Now it's up to 500. I've had some people make some comments that where they're saying some numbers about combinations. I'm like, yeah, we did this one and it just had you know, a couple simple things, nothing internal, just like headers and a tune or cold air. And he's saying that it makes like 100 more than every other motor that I've ever seen tested like that. Because I've done a lot of chassis dyno stuff too. And I'm like, a stock one makes this, and like bolt-on ones and tunes make this, and you're saying yours is 100 above that? Like, I'm just not buying it. How are you doing? Still trying to figure out the multi-length push rods in my 5.3, but good news, the car has been cut in and paint is close. Okay. Yeah, I don't understand why you'd have different push rod lengths. If you ever get the chance, turbo RY45, they start at high power ending. What is an RY45? What? I don't recognize that designation. Let's rub your shoe wearing crumb cake. I was talking to Jimmy today, and he was over, ran some dyno on a Coyote. So for all you Coyote guys, hey, look, here's some Coyote dyno. And then the other thing is the guys there had a 1.5, not a 2J, but a 1.5J Toyota motor, all stock, I guess, and but turbocharged and ran it up to like, I don't know, 20, somewhere between 20 and 25 pounds of boost. Hooked up an aftermarket window washer on my Turbo Firebird today. Had to pull the factory canister when I mounted the intercooler. Nice being able to clean the windshield. There you go. I love siphoning gas. My neighbors can't figure out why their cars are getting said bad gas mileage. At least it's like new usable gas. This stuff is really bad. Stock Gen 3 internals will handle more than you can safely make on 93. Oh yeah, that's not a problem at all. Worn fuel injector should be replaced. Chased my tail on knock sensor. Knock issues, cruise and a little wide open throttle on the stock 22-pound 5.3 injectors. Installed some FIC 50s and the knock is gone. That's nice. I took, when we were doing the blower, putting the M90 on there, which I'd still like to have on there kind of, but when we were doing that, I took the injectors out just to make sure, and we flowed them all, and they were like all spot on. It was nice. They were nice and even. I have an 02 LQ4. Want to do 500 horsepower, 500 wheel horsepower. You're not going to be able to do that NA. So you need to, if you're wanting to do it with a turbo, you could just do that with a stock cam. So let's revise what you want to do here. Have you done a comparison between a 5.3 and a D-stroke 6-liter using a 4.8 crank? No, I don't think those come out to be the same displacement though, do they? I have a 5.3 with an S480. When it fires off, it jumps from 7 pounds to 14 pounds in 1/8 of a second. Is that normal? Because I'm having trouble keeping it controlled, and this is on the trans brake. You have a wastegate issue. You have a sticking wastegate or too small of a wastegate. Any news on the ball bearing turbos? No, I can. Well, I can. I'll have to talk to Jimmy tomorrow about that. You should definitely replace your 5.3 with the Ultimate EcoBoost 4.8 GTX. I know I was trying to talk my neighbor into running the asymmetrical turbo on this really nice black older body style truck. I think it's from the 80s. I think I'll have to ask him what year it is when I do the interview. But I'm trying to get him to run one of those because I want somebody to run one of those and go to LS Fest West or somewhere to do that tomorrow. And also on the turbo, Justin, are you doing a controller or something? Is your boost controller not the right duty cycle or something? Tomorrow it's two holidays in one day. Oh, 420. There you go. Mom's gonna feel really good, huh? I still have the first engine I ever built. Nice. When I was in college, it was a Ford 302 68 Mustang, 289 4V heads with the bigger valves. Okay. Oh, 4-barrel heads, yeah. 9.5 to 1 compression, R22 cam. We dynoed it. 292 wheel horsepower? It seems pretty high for a 289. Are you talking about it had 4-barrel Windsor heads on it? What's an R22 cam? What are the specs on that? I would honestly be happy if a 289 just made 292 flywheel horsepower. Can you make a small block Chevy with fast response like an LS? I don't know what you mean by fast response. What are your thoughts on in the tank fuel pumps versus inline pumps for roughly 1,000 horsepower with a surge tank? Well, you can do it either way. It just depends on how you plumb it. Either one of them work. I myself like the fuel pumps in the tank so that you're not allowing, you're not relying on gravity feed into the pump. If you are doing that, make sure that the feed that you have is really big going to the pumps if your pumps are external. Are you talking about 4L60Es? What are some simple mods to make one hold more power? Does anybody have any ideas for this? I mean, I think it's the normal stuff. I think it's a Corvette servo. I think it's clutches and bands, a sun shield, shift kit, 3/4 race. The 292 is 60 over. Okay, yeah, 3-inch stroke crank. It's a unique build. Specs are close to the 67-302. Okay, so it has fuely heads on it. And since it's overboard that much, you can put not power pack heads on it, right? You could put regular fuely heads on it. I heard someone say something about shimming valve springs. Would you need to do that with a Truck Plus with 660? No. No, you shimming them is going to add spring pressure. A 660 spring, like a BTR 660 spring, already has way more spring pressure than you need for a Truck Plus cam. Maybe a cooler and shift kit with a vet servo. Yeah. My 350 my Camaro revs so fast it sucks up LS engines and spits them out the tailpipe. Throwing shade. So just go turbo and cam on my LQ4 instead. What would be cheaper and more reliable? If you're trying to make, I can't remember if you are, but if you're the guy that's trying to make 600 horsepower or whatever, you're not going to do that NA. It's or if you could, it's going to be very, very expensive. And you can't make 600 wheel horsepower with a 6-liter NA. You can. 99.99% of the people don't. The people that are dedicated racers, and it's a really expensive mode. So, but you can easily do it with a turbo. The engine, my wife's 66 Mustang. I crashed my Maverick. The Maverick went 1270s, only weighed 2,600 pounds. Pretty cool. I think I'm eating too much for dinner. 1 pound of sauteed imitation crab meat legs, 20 ounces of ribeye, and root beer. You're going big there. What are your thoughts on draining oil and filling with diesel for engine flush? I've heard of people doing that. I've also heard of people using transmission fluid to clean it out. I think if you're spinning it with a pump, it's probably not bad. Add half a quart trans fluid, run for 5 minutes, and then change the oil. Yeah, that's what I was talking about, the trans stuff. That I've heard people doing that. And we've done that on the engine dyno when we've wanted to clean out water and stuff. Is there a worthwhile emissions legal cam for your truck? For mine, I don't know of any emissions legal cams for a LS. If somebody might want to let me know. Do you know how much a stock 318 makes with a 4-barrel? I don't know. I have not run any 318s. Find Richard's video about the 4L60 and look at the most recent comment link submitted, which talks about upping the line pressure. At the gym working out, good for you. I haven't even run today. I was just so busy being, under and on top of and around car stuff. RY45 is the aftermarket version of the FR9 Ford NASCAR engine. The RY45 has a taller deck and lots of room for bore and stroke. Okay, yeah, that's not that's not something I'm going to come across on a wrecking yard. Hunting down. Let's see. This will be interesting because I'm curious about this. I'm hunting down an ABS issue. Not so much an issue as having to just replace the entire system. The previous owner decided to cut out completely. I still have the brake lights coming on my dash. So I'm getting check engine lights on my ABS setup. Drain a quart of oil out and add a quart of transmission fluid. Run for an hour, then change it. Your pan will be full of sludge. If you ever ran bad oil, do not run diesel in the oil. It will cause issues. Still waiting for your opinion on a big bore short stroke 350 LS. I think it's fine. I ran one. I didn't do it with a 6-liter block. I ran it with an LS3 block and a crank. My opinion on that is if you're de-stroking a 6-liter, what you're doing is having it make less power. So I'm not comparing that motor. Like if you take a 6-liter and put a 4.8 crank in it, I'm not comparing that to a 5.3. I'm comparing that to a 6-liter because you just took displacement and power away from the 6-liter, in my opinion. And a 350 LS, if that's what the displacement comes out to, is going to make more than a 325-inch LS, which also makes more than a 293-inch, like 4.8-liter LS. Because the bigger that you go, the more power that it makes. You might compare that to a LS1, like a 5.7 LS1. But the bore and stroke does not change power output dramatically. If you put the same cam and the same heads and the same compression and the same intake and all that, you would make very close to the same power. Wastegate in a bad place. Yeah, you can also... Wastegate priority is a critical thing for proper boost control. A lot of guys just, like if you have the tube, they just stick it off 90 degrees. That doesn't work. You need to have the wastegate in the direction of flow, and then it needs to go to the wastegate first and then needs to turn up to where the turbo is. Revive the Gen 3 V10 plans and make it happen. What sort of machining would you and could you do for a max effort LS block to maximize power abilities? Well, you just want to make sure that all of the things are straight, but the machining part of it is, other than making sure that the crank bore is straight and the cam bore is straight and that the deck surfaces are all straight and parallel and stuff, and that the thing is honed properly based on whatever piston ring that you're going to run, all of that stuff. But there's not going to be any tricks in there that are going to like free up a whole bunch of power. Building a 62 Rambler on an S10 frame with a small block Chevy. It's all stock motor for power tour use. What's the max cruise RPM you'd run it at? I have 410 gears and we'll be taking on power tour. I would definitely run an overdrive trans in it. Another magic owner. That's right. Currently swapping a Gen 4 5.3 into my IO boat. What do you think the weak links for high load, consistent RPM on a current stock bottom end engine is? Valvetrain bottom end. I don't think any of those are going to be a problem. I think that you might look at the oiling under constant RPM like that, but otherwise, I don't think that that's a problem. I'm sure that that setup probably has an oil to water cooler, so that's a good idea. Got a ton done this weekend. I've been diagnosing issues with my 4G63T for turbo, being down on power and suddenly being 10 to 15% rich. Compression is great. Good leak down. Going to scope the cat next. Yeah, we just get rid of the exhaust and then put a turnout on it just to test exactly that. Could say I'm celebrating my raise at work. Got 10% commission per hour. Nice. Every cam is emissions legal. I got to prime my oil pump and my junkyard Boss 290 if the pump gears haven't been turned into gravel. Did they get a bunch of debris into them? I don't remember the cam spec, but the camshaft almost maxed out the 289 heads. I think the lift was 522, duration 288 or 292. Yeah, that's a lot. RI-55 has a wet cam tunnel and a dry sump. Yeah, the guys from Westech have run a bunch of the older style cup motors. And they're both Dodge and Chevrolet stuff. I don't remember there being a Ford one there. But yeah, they make a lot of power. I have an 02 Tahoe L59. Should I rebuild, own it, and want to do something with it? Is it worth keeping the 5.3? Yeah, they're really good. With a 700 R4, my Rambler, but am I having some serious trouble tuning it with the TV cable? Is it it's not computer controlled, right? All that's just manual. I think you just have to get the length right. Power guesses on my next build, Pontiac 455, Speedmaster aluminum heads, 270 CFM. Are you running them the way that they come from Speedmaster? 243, 252. That should be a good combination. I'm going to have Evan on very soon here, and he's going to talk about his Ram 5 headed deal that he did, that he tested out at West Tech. 5.4 modulars have powder metal forged oil pump gears. You can drop them and shatter them. Oh, you bought the heads bare, but are they ported though, Dakota? 7R4 is not computer controlled, cable only. Can't figure out the cable length and throw on the clutch on the carb linkage. Do you think a truck pan has better oiling than an F-body pan? I have both, and clearance is not an issue. I thought that the hot setup on the F-body stuff was the Batwing one. I don't know if that's an LS6 pan or a Corvette pan. I thought that that's the one that people wanted to use. I would want something, the ideal pan would be something that's much bigger and is just a rectangle pan, and then has the oil down away from the rotating assembly. How much do you think a stock late 80s truck 302 could make with 7 pounds of boost? Well, that motor doesn't make very much power to begin with. So 7 pounds will be 50% more, or just less than 50% more of from whatever it makes. For the L59, would a camshaft be the first step? I've seen so much about heads and have considered going with head first. I'm not sure if the cam would affect the day-to-day driving, say a stage 2. I would not put a stage 2 camshaft in it. I would not change the heads yet. The thing that's going to give you the most power right now is definitely a camshaft. So for a camshaft, you just need to decide, do I want this thing to use a stock converter? How do I want it to idle? Do I want to have a little bit of chop? Do I only want it to make power on the big end? Do I want to have good average power? You know, what things do you want in the camshaft? And then I'll recommend a cam for you. But you'll get a lot more from a camshaft than you will from cylinder heads. Cylinder heads with a stock camshaft are not going to give you very much. And the heads that you have on there will support 500 horsepower. I got some valves out of an old Edelbrock heads. I went through them and cleaned them up. No major port work, just port match and clean up the bowls and clean up the bowls. Now, I didn't port them except for the bowls and port matching and stuff. What are you doing, huh? What's Brady doing? What a good boy. Come here. Get up here, huh? So happy. I'm so happy. Okay. What are you doing? What are you looking for? What are you looking to try to find? There's nothing up here. There's nothing up here. What do you smell? Huh? What do you smell? No, that's not for you. That's not for you. Dogs. I got some valve. Oh, the valve's okay. Why a distributor gear gaining $100 every year post-COVID for small block Fords? Outrageous from MSD for hydraulic cams. Yeah, I don't know what they're doing with the gears on those. I mean, gears for distributors have always been like the bane of our existence at West Tech, because they had a whole selection of distributors, and then they finally labeled them all that said, you know, hydraulic roller, solid roller, flat tappet, whatever. And so they had to have one distributor for each combination of that. And then they eventually just put bronze gears on all of them because they weren't going to run them for very long on the dyno. And then you just run bronze gears on all of them, but you just get a little bit of material in the motor. What are you doing? What do you smell? What are you trying to look for? There's nothing up here. Huh? Go get Brady. Go get Brady. I know. I'll be done in a little bit. I will. I promise. I promise. What's mommy doing down there? Go see. Common upgrade is to put a Mellings 10-226 oil pump with billet gears, or Boundary 3V pump with billet gears. Okay, for the modular Ford. So what is the best cam kit I should start with, and what kind of horsepower should I expect on your LQ4? Well, if you want to know exactly what they do, take a look at, and I don't remember what kind of camshaft you want, but if you take a look at the videos that I have up recently, where we ran an LQ4 with both of my cams, the low buck truck camshaft and the truck plus, and then now we have the RHIPPER, which is smaller. But both of those cams, we ran both of them, and we ran both of them with a truck manifold and with a Trailblazer SS. So if you're just doing a cam, like those cams are going to put you at 450 or something. Have you done any testing with the L28 yet? I have not. How much boost do you think a stock Vortec 350 will hold, assuming rings get gapped? I don't know any reason why it won't go to 4 digits. At least the short block. I wouldn't try to do that, I don't think, with the stock heads on it, because I think that they would hinder power. It just take a lot of boost to get there. I have a problem with reading push rod checker. Can you tell me how to read the measurements? Thank you. I don't ever use a push rod checker. What I do, and what motor is this on? If it's on an LS, the way that I do an LS is I only test usually one. I test two. I test an intake and an exhaust. So I take all the other rockers off. I put the push rods in and rotate the motor so that you're on the heel of the cam of whichever one that you want to test. I put 2 of them in there just so that it locates the, you have to have the rocker stand in there. And so having the other one in there helps locate the rocker stand. So what you do is I tighten the bolt that holds the rocker down with the cam on the heel of the cam, not on the lobe. Tighten it down, finger tighten it so that there's no lash. That means so everything is touching. The lifter's touching the push rod's touching the rocker's touching the valve. They're all in contact, but you haven't bolted the bolt all the way down so that the rocker is down on the stand yet. Then what you do is I take a ratchet with a 5/16 or an 8mm, and I tighten that bolt down until the rocker is seated in the stand. And you count the number of turns that it takes to do that. I don't use a push rod checker. That's way too much work and is way too slow compared to just bolting the rocker on the way that you always bolt the rocker on when you're putting rockers back on. There's no science to that. The only thing that has to happen is the camshaft has to be in the right place. And all you do is rotate the motor. I take all the plugs out. You rotate the motor with the push rods in there, and you rotate the motor until the push rods are not moving. When the push rods are not moving up or down, you're in the right spot. Doesn't matter if you're on this side of it or the bottom side or this side. As long as the push rods are not moving, you're in the right spot. Then bolt the rocker down, like I said, finger tighten it so that it doesn't move at all. That's 0 lash. Count the number of turns that it takes to bottom out the rocker on the rocker stand. And if it's between a half a turn and 1.5 turns, you are golden. If it's less than that, the push rod's too short. If it's more than that, the push rod's too long. I don't know how much power your 455 is going to make. I have no idea. 5.3, adding a sloppy stage 2, long tube, 799 heads, high volume, melling, oil pump, double roller chain, new sprockets. What kind of power will it make? Well, the first thing I would tell you is don't use a double roller timing chain. It's not needed, and you don't need new sprockets. But a sloppy stage 2 in a 5.3 is going to be, I don't know, I can tell you exactly. I'm thinking that it's low to mid 400s. Dyno results, Cathedral Port, 5.3, BTR cam comparison. It's not that one. I did run a slopster. Cam test. Let's see, sloppy stage 2. Okay, so this was on a 5.3 L33, so a flat top piston, 799 head, stock rocker, stock truck intake manifold. We ran a sloppy stage 2 and it made 438. Good to hear your thoughts on this Easter weekend. I don't know what the rest of that means. Regarding the poll, I'd rebuild the existing motor if it's rebuildable. Another used motor is another set of problems. This one, all of the motors that I get are definitely rebuildable. It's just how much do you have to rebuild it? Do you have to take it down to the bare block, or what do you have to do? Regarding the poll, okay, thank you for the input. I can't run your low buck truck cam due to reversion concerns with wet exhaust. Oh, okay, on a boat application. That makes sense. Love seeing you release a 212, 218. Perfect for what I need. Yeah, that'll be better. That'd be a better choice. The OEM cams, our cams should be really close to an OEM base circle. So the push rod length should be comparable. Make it a 6-liter max engine if you swap it. Thanks. Oh, I'm not going to put a 6-liter in. If anything, I would put a 4.8 in. And I'd like to get rid of the 4-wheel drive. I would really just like a 2-wheel drive 4.8 truck. And a manual trans 4.8 truck would be awesome. Thanks for all the work. Happy to help. Conditionally accepted. What was your question? I don't know what you're talking about. Thread count, thread pulled any rocker studs. Have I ever pulled any rocker studs? Well, we're not, in doing that method that I just talked about for measuring push rod length, we're doing the minimum amount of stress on the threads. When you try to bolt them against spring pressure or unbolt them against spring pressure, that's not a good idea. You should always unbolt the ones that are free to unbolt all the way, and then rotate the motor till the other ones come up and don't have spring load on them, and then unbolt those rockers. Richard, have you ever run the dual carb sheet metal tunnel ram on an LS? I'm curious how it compares to regular dual plane. I have seen those, but I've seen them be awful problematic on other combinations. So I don't know if I've ever done that. I would probably try that on, because it's just a sniper intake manifold. It's the same as the other one, just has openings up top. I probably would run that fuel injected with 4-hole throttle bodies up there, but not carbureted. I think it's going to be problematic carbureted. It certainly was on the small block Chevy, but they do have Siamese runners though. So what would you build, a Gen 3 5.3 or an LQ4? For what? For anybody else that wants to make power, I would pick a 6-liter over a 5.3, but that's not what I want for my truck. I would rather have better fuel mileage for my truck because I don't ever race it around. It's all stock. Need to do the big bang on a big block 460. Probably not a big bang on a 460, but I would like to run a turbo on one. Would also be cool on a Cleveland. Again, I wouldn't do a big bang on a Cleveland, but I would like to do more Cleveland tests. 4200 Atlas. I know I do have 2 of those. I need to run them again. You think LS engines can benefit from thinner than OEM head gaskets to get quench closer to? I'm not concerned about people talk about quench numbers. I'm not concerned about that at all. If I change the thickness of the head gasket, which I have a lot, we have thinner head gaskets on the L33. We have 41 thousandths gaskets on the L33 because Felpro makes them. We do it for added compression. Pope, horsepower street rod race. Yeah, I would build, if it's an NA one, I'd build a 6-liter. If you're going to do a turbo, either one of them will make more power than you're going to be able to put down. Stock okay, rocker, stud, ARP. I don't use ARP stuff on the rockers. Did you sell the 500 Cadillac? I have not. It's still there. 2 M90s on what? On a 5.3 or something? I have an 08 Sierra 2-wheel regular cab shorty 4.8 5-speed. Was going to slap a blown 496 in it. But you mentioned a 4.8. Will the NV 3500 bolt up and hold up? I don't know. I think it will, right? If that's the 4.3, if it's the 4.3 Vortec motor, that's the same bell housing as a small block Chevy. And a small block Chevy will definitely bolt up to a 4.8. I just don't know about what you got to do about the distances. But we run a small, all the LS motors that I test are run on a small block Chevy bell housing. How about a Big Bang North Star? 5.3 or 6.0 for boost, stock internals, and forge. What engine's better? There isn't one that's better. Both of those have the same strength internals. If you can find an acceptable 400M in the junkyard, they'll probably make a Big Bang, but probably be cool till it did. I have run 400s before. I ran one that we built up, and it did good. It made a lot of power. It's a Stroker Cleveland. I mean, it can't not make power. You put good heads on it. Quench does not matter. It's chamber CCs and bore height that matter more. I think for doing a quench test, I think that the thing that you would be looking at is, because here's the problem with people that talk about quench. Not that I don't want to put anybody down, but we get distracted by talking about the wrong thing. So if we're adjusting the quench, the other thing we're adjusting is compression. So a lot of people like to talk about quench and having an optimized power. I wouldn't look at it like that. I just look at compression. We're changing the compression. That's how we're changing the power. That's the big thing. The quench would be a small thing. The quench, I think it would be much better to look at detonation thresholds with different quench. That will be the thing that I'd like to look at. Because like if we change the compression and added compression, but improve the detonation threshold, that would be a win-win. And that's something I would like to see on quench stuff. For L59 camshaft, I'd love to have the chop while at idle, something that produces low-end torque. Go get one of my, go to richardholdnerperformance.com and get a low buck truck camshaft for your L59. You'll be happy with that. Late 4.3 NV3500 is the same interchange as a 4.8 Okay. So did they put NV3500s behind 4.8s? Is the block of a 5.3 better than a 6.0? No, they're the same. The one that we've made the most power out of is a 6-liter. That was a Gen 4, but I also ran a Gen 3 one and also ran lots of Gen 3, a 4.8, and a 5.3. You don't have to worry about blocks. That's not what you're going to break. You're not going to break a block. You're not going to break a crank. The thing that will let go if you're trying to maximize the amount of power that you're trying to make is a rod or a piston if it's stock. Feel less bad about potentially scattering a 400M in a Big Bang test than a regular 351 Cleveland. Yeah, I wouldn't do that to a Cleveland. There's just not enough of them around. I'm still kicking myself for not getting that all stock Cleveland that was there when I was at the wrecking yard. Crevice losses with the whole quench topic. Get a camshaft ground and try a Big Bang firing order 2 cylinders at once on a 5.3. I don't know what you mean. How would you recommend detuning, reducing torque output as to not overpower my 4L65 LQ4 with your low buck truck cam and Trailblazer SS? Is your 4L65, is that the front wheel drive one? That's a 4T65, right? You could definitely do that in the tune. You could talk to a guy who's really good at tuning, but you could take timing away and stuff. And especially on the shifts, which I think are kind of the critical thing. I was under the impression 5.3 have thicker walls for boosted applications. No, that's a myth. Everybody told me before I ran the 6-liter that the 5.3s make more power because they have more distance between the cylinders because they're, smaller bore or whatever. And that the head gasket seals better and that everybody's running 5.3s, yada, yada, yada. You run a 6-liter, it makes more power NA, and it makes more power under boost. And we never had any head gasket problems, didn't do any of that. That's not an issue. You don't have to worry about the block. Like I said, if you're running a stock bottom end, the block isn't the issue, nor is the crank. It's definitely a rod or piston will be the first thing that you break. And then after that, you still don't have to worry about the block. You have to worry about the thickness of the deck of the heads that you're using. That would be the next thing. Early 4.8 trucks had a manual option, 2-wheel drive only, I believe, and only ever the 4.8. I'd like to find one of those. Good luck finding an MD3500 in junkyards. It's a standard transmission problem. They are rare. Gap rings is a trick on running boost. Yeah, you do want to have enough gap if you're going to do that. Wouldn't feel too bad about the possibility of scattering a late model 460. 4L65 is a beef buff 4L60. Okay. I missed why you're needing to rebuild the 5.3 in your truck. I don't know that I need to rebuild it. It just has low oil pressure. If you're trying to do mileage, miser, disconnect the front axle, pull the drive shaft, and then start doing the Bonneville arrow. I've got a few Indy 3500 kicking around, and the Sierra and my son with both 4.3 sticks. A V8 firing 2 cylinders simultaneously at a time. Why? So why again do we want to do that? Is the ramp profile of a hydraulic roller generally more gentle and easier on the lifter and valve train than a solid roller cam? I don't know if that's the case because they put lash in the solid for that, for the ramp rate of the cam. .8 and a T5 would be a neat setup. Yeah, those will all bolt up. Guy on YouTube has a 460 EFI F350 at 14 to 18 pounds on a single turbo. I think he's around 600 to 700. There are other stock rod and piston that would be an upgrade. To a Gen 3 motor, you could put Gen 4 stuff in there. You think that the hydraulic rollers have less ramp rate? Trying to remember what Brule and those guys were doing. I thought that they were putting solid lifter. Were they putting solid lifters on hydraulic roller lifter lobes? Brule didn't like hydraulic roller stuff. He liked solid stuff. The advantage of a hydraulic roller is not having to adjust as much, and you don't have any lash. So if you ran the two cams the same, the hydraulic roller would make more power if it would act properly and not bleed down. Problem is he can't load the 460 enough on a chassis dyno to make good boost. Why would he not be able to load it? Did you say it's a stock 460? That should be easy to load. Stock 4.8 and T5 maybe, but I'm not sure a T5 can hold much. The T5 that I had in my Mustang held for I don't know how many years with the Vortex supercharger on it and ported heads and a camshaft and intake manifold, and I road raced it and drag raced it and ran at the Silver State and did all that with the stock original T5 in it. So I'm not, people that blow up T5s, like guys did that with Mustangs, they did it under abuse. They didn't do that because the transmission was not, I mean, it was not strong enough for their abuse, but it's strong enough. Like I road raced the thing. And so with supercharged motors, stock T5s. And so we had way more shifts and, you know, ran lap after lap after lap with lots of power, but we weren't speed shifting it and punching the stereo and doing any of that. Solid on the hydraulic cam can be done. Put a bottle of the Lucas oil additive in your truck. If the pressure improves, do you have a pump or bearing issue? If it doesn't, you could have a pickup issue. The dyno he is on doesn't load enough. Operator told him to go to a diesel dyno since he isn't hitting the same boost as he does on the street. Okay. Is it a non-loaded dyno? Is it like a dyno jet style, like an inertia dyno? Inertial dampening, alluvial dampening. Our S10 still a thing in California. It still see a surprising amount of here considering how things rust. A 2.2 manual single cam would be a neat setup. My dad gets 27 on the highway. I'm surprised how like mini trucks, like I like little Toyotas, 22Rs and stuff. I like those. I like S10s. I like all of those little trucks, but they do not get good fuel mileage. I want them to get like Honda Civic fuel mileage, but they don't do that. Jack the rear end up to see if the pressure rises. I can just, can't I just nose the car down into a slope and do that? Can I just slam on the brakes really fast and then see if the oil pressure changes? Shift is probably nicer in a T5 over 3500. I don't know. I don't ever remember driving anything that had a 3500 in it. Don't forget the deep oil pan, the advantage of more oil for safety when running hard. He had to run smaller tires for that particular dyno too, so that's probably something of an effect. Yeah, smaller tires would change the gear ratio. Love my S10's market needs a new one that looks good. The truck not getting Civic miles per gallon. It's expected since they have a lot of frontal area. They do. It is true. Michael, Phil and Tina's channel wants to know about the mods to the 4L65. I think lots of guys run those on a 6-liter, but I think it's how much you're abusing it, though. They remake the S10, they'll make it a giant mid-size van truck instead of a mini truck. Yeah, I know. I think that they will. Everything gets bloated, it seems like. It's like all these 9/8 scale muscle cars. Install a new engine and see if the pressure changes. If not, suspect a cluster issue. Yeah. That's a monster for a truck on 35s. Change the air dam if you want better mileage. Are you talking about on my truck? Colorado is still sold as an S10 overseas, so it's already bloated. Yeah. I think try-wise on the O2, whatever motor you choose. No, I want to put a turbo on it for fuel mileage. Starting to look at Sunfires. It also uses a 2.2, and the mileage doesn't seem any better. New Rangers. A guy across the street here has a Ranger that's in really nice shape. Got 2 more minutes. How did our pull do? Rather than pull and do a razor blade rebuild, and I screwed that all up. Should I swap another motor in? 61% saying yeah. Swap till you drop, man. Have you ever tested tri-wise versus a comparable set of long tubes? I have many times on lots of different motors, and I've always come to the same conclusion that there's no universal tri-wide does this and long tubes do this. That particular set of tri-wise did something, and then that particular set of long tubes also did something. But we did a lot of extensive testing, and most of it was on 4-cylinder Honda stuff. And we could get both of the header designs to do the same thing, depending on how we adjusted tube lengths and diameters and stuff. The death of mini trucks is ironically because of fuel mileage requirements. Solid roller lifter on a hydraulic roller cam sounds like it possibly be better for endurance, durability, longevity than a hydraulic roller lifter. I don't think that that's the case. I don't think that the solid roller is a good idea for any sort of street application. A Ranger with a cleavor, low buck truck cam, needed bigger than 28-pound injectors. Let's go to our calculator. 28 times 16 equals 448 horsepower with a little bit of wiggle room. So let's see. Is that in a 4.8 or a 5.3? If it's in a 4.8 or a 5.3, it'll be just enough. If it's on a 4.8, it'll be enough. On a 5.3, it'll be just enough. Can a low boost turbo add to fuel mileage? You're not chasing crazy power or turbo power. It will hurt power, because if you're running boost, you have to run more fuel, and more fuel is not good. You can put the solid rollers on a hydraulic roller cam, but not the other way. Guess who got an EFI 300 running on the Terminator X with an unmodified stock distributor? Way to go.